On August 20th, 2004, the high wilderness of the Uinta Mountains was waking up to a clear, crisp morning. Near the edge of Cuberant Lake, 12-year-old Garrett Bardsley was doing what many kids in Utah do on a summer Friday. He was fishing with his father. They were part of a Boy Scout troop on a multi-day backpacking trip, surrounded by some of the most rugged terrain in the American West. At 8 a.m., the only problem Garrett had was a pair of soaked shoes and wet socks from the lake's edge. It was a minor inconvenience, the kind of small detail that usually gets fixed with a quick trip back to a tent. Garrett told his father, Kevin, that he was going to head back to their campsite to change into dry clothes. The camp was only about 150 yards away, roughly the length of a block and a half. Kevin watched his son walk toward the trail, even shouting out a quick direction to make sure he stayed on the right path. He looked away for just a moment to focus back on the water. When he looked back, the shoreline was empty. Garrett Bardsley hadn't just walked out of sight. He had walked out of the world. Today, we are looking into the 150-foot void and the search that turned a short walk into a 20-year mystery. The geography of the Cuberant Lakes Basin is a landscape of extremes. Located in the high Uintas, the area sits at an elevation of nearly 10,000 feet, where the air is thin and the terrain is a chaotic mix of dense pine forests and massive granite boulder fields. It is a place that feels open and claustrophobic at the same time. On that Friday morning, visibility was perfect. There was no fog, no rain, and no immediate reason for a 12-year-old to lose his way on a path he had already walked several times. The distance between the fishing spot and the campsite was negligible. In the world of search and rescue, this is known as a point-to-point disappearance. Garrett wasn't embarking on a miles-long solo hike. He was navigating a transition zone between two established locations. Kevin Bardsley's testimony creates a chillingly narrow window for the disappearance. He didn't just let his son wander off. He maintained a visual tether on him as the boy moved around the lake. Kevin even recalled reminding Garrett which trail would lead him directly back to the tents. But the Uintas have a way of swallowing sound and motion. After about 20 minutes, when Garrett didn't return to the lake to finish fishing, Kevin headed back to the campsite himself. He expected to find his son sitting on a log, lacing up dry shoes. Instead, he found the rest of the Boy Scout troop. But no Garrett. No one at the camp had seen him. No one had heard him. The most haunting detail of that morning came as Kevin was searching the immediate area. He reported hearing a voice call out, "Dad," from the woods. He stopped, holding his breath, and looked toward the trees, but there was no movement. It was a single, solitary word that suggested his son was still close, still within earshot, yet completely invisible to the eye. It was as if Garrett was standing just behind a thin curtain of reality, unable to step through. When the official search began later that day, it quickly became one of the largest operations in Utah's history. Over the next week, the silence of the Cuberant Basin was replaced by the mechanical roar of helicopters and the steady crunch of boots on stone. More than 1,400 volunteers, including specialized mountain rescue teams and the Summit County Sheriff's Office, poured into the mountains. They deployed every tool in the modern investigative arsenal. Infrared cameras designed to spot heat signatures, aerial surveillance, and teams of horseback riders. The physical reality of searching the high Uintas is a grueling, vertical nightmare. The ground isn't just dirt. It's a jagged mosaic of talus and scree, loose rock that can shift under a person's weight, potentially trapping a limb in a deep crevice. The weather during those first few days didn't help. While it was summer, the temperature at that altitude plummeted to 18 degrees Fahrenheit at night. Rain and snow began to fall, turning the granite slippery and erasing any subtle tracks Garrett might have left in the soil. Despite the massive human presence, the search was defined by what wasn't there. Usually, When a person goes missing in the woods, they leave a trail of signatures. They snag a piece of clothing on a branch, they leave a clear footprint in a muddy patch, or they drop an item. But Garrett, who was wearing a black hooded sweatshirt and red sweatpants, seemed to have left no physical mark on the landscape. The search dogs added another layer of mechanical disbelief. These K9 units, trained to track a scent across miles of rugged terrain, couldn't find a single trace of Garrett. Not at the fishing spot, not on the trail to the camp, and not in the surrounding forest. To the dogs, it was as if Garrett's scent ended exactly where his father last saw him. This total lack of biological evidence is a hallmark of many high-altitude disappearances, leading investigators to wonder if he had been lifted from the ground or if the shifting weather had simply performed a total forensic wipe of the mountain. In any cold case, there is usually one piece of evidence that sticks in the mind because it raises more questions than it answers. For the Bardsley case, it was the discovery made on the second day of the search. About half a mile away from the spot where Garrett was last seen, a searcher found a single Nike sock. It was located in a massive granite boulder field, tucked into a crevice. The condition of the sock was unsettling. It was damp and wadded up, looking exactly like it had been pulled off a wet foot and abandoned. Given that Garrett had left the lake specifically because his socks were wet, the discovery felt like a breakthrough. The Summit County Sheriff noted that the location, a boulder field, was the kind of place a lost person might seek shelter from the freezing wind, perhaps trying to crawl into a small cave or outcropping to stay warm. However, the sock clue quickly became a point of contention. A volunteer searcher later claimed the sock belonged to him, stating he must have dropped it earlier in the day. But this explanation didn't sit right with everyone. Why would a searcher be carrying a single wadded up damp Nike sock in his pocket? And why would it be found in a crevice half a mile away? If the sock did belong to Garrett, it suggests a terrifying trajectory. To get from the 150-yard trail to that boulder field, Garrett would have had to travel a significant distance through dense, confusing brush in a direction that led away from both the lake and the camp. It would mean that in the minutes after his father looked away, Garrett didn't just take a wrong turn. He moved with a speed and a sense of purpose that took him far beyond the initial search perimeter before the first siren even sounded. If he had reached that boulder field, he was likely already suffering from the early stages of hypothermia, a condition that can cause paradoxical undressing, a state where the brain tells the body it is burning up, leading the victim to remove their clothes even as they freeze to death. Yet, besides that one possible sock, no other clothing was ever found. The official search for Garrett Bardsley lasted nearly 10 days before being scaled back. In the months and years that followed, Kevin Bardsley refused to let the case go quiet. He returned to the Uintas hundreds of times, sometimes with small teams of friends, other times alone, crawling into the very boulder fields where the sock was found. He found nothing. The Uinta Mountains have since become part of a larger conversation about the Uinta Triangle, a region known for a high concentration of unexplained disappearances and strange occurrences. To the locals, the mountains are beautiful but hungry, a place where the geology itself seems to work against the recovery of the lost. But for the Bardsley family, the mystery isn't about folklore. It's about the physics of a 150-yard walk. Kevin Bardsley founded the Garrett Bardsley Foundation, an organization that has since assisted in dozens of other missing person cases. They provide high-tech equipment, drones, and a network of volunteers to ensure that other families don't have to face the mountain alone. It is a legacy built on the hope that someone else might find the answer that has eluded the Bardsleys for 2 decades. Today, Garrett's case remains open, but inactive. There are no new leads, no fresh evidence, and the Uinta Mountains remain as silent as they were that August morning.